Progressivism in Arkansas gets expressed probably most clearly in the governorship of George Donaghy. George Donaghy was elected governor in 1908. He was reelected in 1910. And if you look at the inaugural address of Donaghy, if you look at the planks of the party platform that he ran on, and you see some great expressions of progressivism. Progressivism was a political movement that had some commonalities with populism, but is important to distinguish from populism. Populism was very much a political movement that really focused on giving power back to the little man. And that little man was most likely to be found on the farms and in the rural areas of places like Arkansas. Progressivism was a different and a little bit later political movement. Progressivism was a movement much more of the elites, much more of the educated classes, much more likely to be found, have its proponents in urban areas.
The Progressives had a really interesting agenda. This period 1900 1920. And the Progressives were very optimistic kind of people. They believed, that all things are possible. And if you get out there and study issues and learn the facts, they had a phrase, the facts will make you free.
Most importantly, in terms of the long-term legacy of the progressive movement in the state, was Donaghy's support for the initiative and referendum, is that he was a key player in pushing forward the initiative and referendum in the state. But the campaign for the initiative and referendum in 1910 conjoined the progressive support of folks like George Donaghy and the populist support of folks like William Jennings Bryan. And it becomes the convergence of progressivism and populism in the first decade of the 20th century.
Well, initiative referendum was an idea of the progressives. And the progressives felt that the state legislature was the most corrupt, most tainted institution in the United States. So what they wanted to do was give the people an opportunity to propose constitutional amendments, initiated acts, things like that. What they wanted to do really to establish kind of a dual legislative power, the state legislature and the people.
The initiative and referendum, so-called I and R, can take one of three forms. And they all involve petitions being signed by the people and therefore putting on the ballot measures. The first form is the initiated constitutional amendment. And in that process, the petitions place before the voters whether those voters want to alter the state constitution. The initiated act is different in that it uses petitions to place before the voters a simple statute, that is, a simple law. And in that case, the people really become the legislative body and decide whether that public policy should become law. And finally, the referendum process puts before the voters for their evaluation a law that has already been passed by the legislature. Do the people approve or disapprove of that law that the legislature has already passed?
One thing in those days, to pass a constitutional amendment, and initiative referendum in Arkansas would be a constitutional amendment, you had to get not only a majority of the vote on the issue, you had to get a majority of the people who voted in the governor's election to have the thing passed. The Bar Association really didn't like it. They felt that, this was just a prelude to recalling judges, and they didn't want that. The Arkansas Gazette was opposed to it. And so there was a lot of opposition to it. Now, George Donaghy, the governor, was a strong supporter of initiative referendum, got it through the legislature. But when he started campaigning for it, he was worried about particularly the opposition of the Bar Association. So to counter this, he got William Jennings Bryan, who was a close friend of his, by the way, a very close friend. He got William Jennings Bryan to come in here for 5 days, campaign up and down the state for initiative and referendum. William Jennings Bryan was a Democratic congressman from Nebraska, great speaker. Again, his famous speech, the Cross of Gold speech. He was Democratic nominee in 1896 and 1900, and also in 1908. When William Jennings Bryan came to talk to a city, they closed the markets, they closed the businesses, they closed the schools to hear William Jennings Bryan. And he was in Arkansas for about 5 or 6 days, estimated to talk to maybe 100,000 people. And with his assistance and with Donahue's support, initiative referendum was passed in Arkansas. Arkansas was the only southern state to have initiative referendum for about 70 years, the only state. So it's kind of a remarkable achievement and accomplishment.
I think the populists who worked so hard for the initiative and referendum would be a little surprised over the kinds of things that the initiative and referendum has been used for since it's being put in place. The initiative and referendum has been used to make statements on things ranging from whether the state should teach evolution in the schools, to definitions of marriage, to what the policies of the state should be related to segregation. It's been used for a lot of different things, probably more having to do with the social policies of the state rather than the tax policies and the government policies that the populists cared most about in the latter years of the 19th and early 20th century.